Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be speaking with author Gill Paul again. I think this is our third or fourth talk.
Is it? Wow.
It is, at least. And hold up your book. She has her brand new book in front of her, Jackie and Maria. This book, I didn't even realize this, Jill, till I was done with it, is 480 pages. And I felt like it was like 200. Usually when I read a book that long, I know it. Like I'm like exhausted by the end. I love this book so much. I was thinking about it this morning again because it's one of those books, for me, it's like stuck with me. I love how you always set up two women. I thought I knew a lot about Jackie Kennedy, but you taught me things. Like, how did this go over in England? I mean, you took two women that weren't English.
It's not published in the UK yet. It comes out in a couple of days after we're talking, so we'll see. In fact, the English publishers, the UK publishers have changed the title. It's not called Jackie and Maria here, it's called The Second Marriage. So maybe they thought there wouldn't be so much recognition of the title, Jackie and Maria, that people wouldn't know who it was. But, we'll see. I think the reactions will be different in different countries. I mean, Jackie Kennedy is American royalty, whereas in Greece, Maria Callas is Greek royalty, and Onassis is actually really revered in Greece as well. So they'll have a different reaction over there. What I was trying to do is to give Jackie and Maria's stories in a very even-handed way. So I'm not taking sides. If readers take sides, that's fine. But I tried to make their stories quite balanced. So
You did. And I didn't take sides either, even though I knew so little about Maria. And you know what's funny is I'm 55. Aristotle died in 75, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
But what I remember is, my mom used to buy those like rag magazines when I was growing up. I remember Jackie and she was big. That marriage was huge here. You know, there was so many pictures. And I actually remember that picture of him coming off the airplane with Maria while he was married to Jackie, and it being like, what? I remember thinking, oh my God, what is going on here? And I was so young, but I was so invested in like that marriage at the time because, like you said, she's kind of royalty and it was all over the place. And we kind of always wondered why him? And then reading this book, I'm like, oh, those questions were all kind of answered. You answered the why him. So what was that research like for you?
I read all the biographies that I could find, and I had a lot of questions about Jackie Kennedy when I started out. I mean, I've always been a huge admirer of hers. Probably started out loving the fashion, but then read biographies and got to know more about her. But I had questions in my head that it's not that easy to answer from a 21st century perspective. Like, why did she put up with her husband cheating on an industrial scale, when they were in the White House? Why did she start dating her sister Lee's ex, Onassis, without actually sitting down with Lee and saying, hey, do you mind about this? and then to agree to marry him, that whole decision that she made, I just read biographies until I found an answer that seemed to me to have emotional truth in it. There's a biography by Barbara Leeming, which really explains how she was suffering from some kind of post-traumatic stress syndrome after Dallas. And they didn't describe it that way at the time, but it's clear from various things that happened over the years that she had it quite badly. And then when Bobby Kennedy was shot in June 1968, she just went into panic mode. She said, they're killing Kennedys. My children are Kennedys. Onassis was right there saying, yeah, marry me and I can protect you. So she did. And she had plenty of other men after her, and they had money too, but he had the most, and he just offered a whole new life. I don't think she was thinking clearly at all. Was she originally thinking that she would go and live in Greece and get away from all the pressures in the States? Because she didn't do that. Her children were still at school in New York, and she decided to keep them there. So she didn't get away from the pressure of the American media at all. I just think she hadn't thought it through.
Yeah. And, I think it was very reactionary. And, when we're talking historical fiction, we're not really giving away stuff. Everyone who's watching this, you just have to read it because I couldn't turn the pages fast enough. What we're going over here is so general. Jill goes into it in such detail. I loved it. And I know you had to take some liberties, and I get that. I could also see your research was so well done on these two women because Maria, I didn't know anything about her, but let's talk about, we've got Jackie, and hers is you can see why she went crazy. Like anybody would have in her circumstance. Why did Maria put up with it? Why did she put up with him?
Maria was quite religious. She was quite traditional Greek. She had a really difficult family background. She definitely got the short straw when it came to families. You know, her own mother speaking out about her to Time magazine and then writing a hostile memoir. It's like, yeah, with families like that, what are you supposed to do? Her first husband was ripping her off, siphoning off her money to his family. And then Onassis came along. This is what it's hard to get across, but he must have had immense charm. You know, it's not just that he could buy you stuff. He really listened to women and made them feel very special. And Maria, she just fell for him, hook, line and sinker. She would have given up everything. She wanted to marry him and be a good Greek housewife. And ideally, she would have liked to have children with him. She was very traditionalist in that sense. That's all she wanted. She thought it's not asking too much. You know, this singing was something that she'd been pushed into by her mother. And sure, I mean, she was spectacular. And this is kind of the first thing you need to know about her, is that there are opera experts today who will still say that she's the greatest first soprano the world has ever known. I mean, she is incredible. And I would urge, this is the one thing I can't get across in a book, urge everybody to Google and listen to her on YouTube, because she's just phenomenal.
You know what? And I haven't yet. I'm going to go do that. I wanted to, and then I just kept forgetting, but I do want to do that because I have never heard her voice. I've heard, of course, we've all kind of heard of her, but I never heard her voice. I just felt like, at one point it just seemed, you just were like begging her. You're like, please, Maria, I beg you not to answer that phone one more time. Please.
Oh, I know.
Phone.
And in fact, I think, you know, probably he was crueler to her than I've portrayed in the book. I think he really was pretty shocking. I mean, Jackie wasn't the only other woman, and Lee, I mean, he did have other women behind her back, and then he'd come back and just expect her to put up with it, and she did.
Yeah. I didn't even know that part about Lee until I read your book. I really didn't. I didn't know that he had, you know, a fling with her. It makes sense because Lee was kind of always after rich. Like, Lee wanted to live that lifestyle. She had a desire for that. From everything I've ever read about her, it was amazing.
And she was always very competitive with Jackie as well. She had to go one better no matter what. You know, if she got married first and then Jackie's husband became president, so Lee's like, no, I need to go one better.
Right.
But, actually, it's the reason that there's not much out there about Lee is because she only died very recently, February last year, 2019, and she'd never openly admitted it. So you risk being sued for libel when you write something about an affair that somebody had when they're still alive. So, I mean, a lot of biographers have said it and she hasn't sued, but I'm not sure my publishers would have let me put that in if she had still been alive.
Right. I was going to say that I think that's why we didn't know that much about her. She kind of was a recluse in New York City. When she was alive, it was kind of like she wasn't really out there. But I do think, and you hinted at this, but I do think she had an eating disorder of some kind. I mean, the woman was just, I mean, you look at Jackie and she looked healthy compared to Lee. Like, Lee just had nothing to her. So I think that she had a lot of mental struggles, you know, herself that nowadays we would know more about than you would have back in the 60s and 70s.
Well, she did have alcohol issues and she went to AA in the 1980s to get over that.
Yes, you did. I forgot you did go into that. I just love that. I mean, you always do the women, and you started it with Maria, which when I went back and I was kind of like looking at this book, knowing I was going to be talking to you and trying to, you know, I always like to try to analyze books because that's just me. Because I'm weird. And I'm like, oh, isn't that interesting? She started with Maria and Maria meeting Ari. So what made that choice for you instead of starting with Jackie?
I don't know. But I always knew that was the beginning of the story for me. But when, you know, that's what started the whole thing, the whole clockwork narrative drive. And in fact, I had to cheat the timeline a little bit here because the meeting when Jack and Jackie Kennedy went to Ari's boat actually happened in 1955. And Maria didn't meet him till 1957. Okay. So I just had to move that meeting where they went to the yacht. I moved it to 1958 just to fit in with my timeline. And I do confess, as you know, Michelle, I always put a historical afterword where I confess if I've had to move anything like that. I don't know why I had the meeting with Maria first. It was just always in my head that's where the story started.
I'm going to give Ari this. If there was a love he had, I'll think that it was her.
Yeah, sure. He did tell his best friend Costa Gratsos that she was the love of his life and various other friends.
So I did have a heart for him in that respect. I was like, why do you keep tormenting this woman? Leave her alone. But I think that in his time of despair, he turned to her. Whenever he had a hard time in his life, he turned to her. Unfortunately, it wasn't Jackie, but because I would have wanted it to be Jackie since she was married to him. But that marriage had so many, back in those days, marriages weren't that simple. There were some things each was getting from the other. I was thinking to myself, I wanted to ask you this question because I have read so many books on the Kennedys, so many, like over the years, for years and years and years. And I thought, why did Bobby, so Bobby was not happy about Ari. He was very protective of Jackie. So he knew, but Ted kind of signed her off. And I thought, you know what, at that point, were the Kennedys getting tired of Jackie? Like, because of Bobby getting shot, was she just like this, like she's a drain. She's a drain on our money. She's a drain on our whole way of life. Like, she's depressed. She's, like the Kennedy women rose to occasions. They did not wallow. They were not wallowers. They didn't want people to feel sorry for them. Jackie was having a hard time living up to that expectation of, you're a Kennedy woman. This is what you do. I don't know. What do you think? That's just my little theory.
I really don't know what was going through their heads, but I do know that when Jackie took Ari to meet Rose Kennedy, she was absolutely charmed by him. He charmed the socks off her. So, and she wished Jackie well in marrying Ari, which Jackie's own mother didn't wish her well at all. She tried to stop the wedding.
Right? She's like, no, you don't have to do this. You don't have to go.
I don't know. I think they wished well for her. I think they wanted her to be all right. They'd all been through this huge, life-changing, traumatic shock. They wanted her to be protected, and Ari convinced them that he could do that. And Ted they didn't wash their hands of her after that. When Ari died, Ted helped her to make sure that she got a proper share of the Onassis estate. They were still there for her.
Oh, good.
I think she was one of them. She'd become one of them through tragedy, even if she hadn't been before.
Right. I was just, like I said, it was kind of my own thought, because I was like, how things would have been different had Bobby lived, is what I guess I was saying. Like, you go alternate.
Well, he'd have been president, probably, wouldn't he? He
would have been president. I don't think she would have married him. I think things would have been a lot different for her, but
no, I don't think she would have married. And of course, Bobby hated him because back in the mid-1950s, there was this scandal over American troop ships that he'd bought and repurposed to use for commercial shipping. And it was real technicalities, but Ari was absolutely furious that he was arrested and fingerprinted and put in jail for several hours like a common criminal. And he just never forgave America for that. And I think that might be part of his motivation. I mean, after that, he paid a fine for some technicality to do with flying ships under the wrong flag. He then moved all his businesses off away from America and over to Europe, all his shipbuilding and all his offices. Right. He was so cross about this humiliation that he felt he'd suffered. So I think he thought he was getting his own back by marrying America's grieving widow, at the time the most famous woman in the world, the American icon, like American royalty, as we said earlier.
Yeah.
And he thought by marrying her, America would have to respect him again, and instead they laughed at him. They called him a sugar daddy. It all backfired for him as well. This is how did you feel about him in the book, Michelle?
I have to say, like I said, there were times that I was like, please let Maria alone, because I loved her and I knew so little about her, but you really made me feel her pain. From her perspective, I was constantly like, ugh. But then you did show us a side of him, through different tragedies in his life that you had to feel for him.
Yeah.
Especially about marrying Jackie. It's like, yeah, he wanted to, but then he kind of wasn't like, we have to get married today, kind of more she was, it seemed like. And that was shocking to me. He was like, we don't have to do this right now. I don't know what would have happened had they postponed it a little bit. I don't know what would have happened. I did have a little bit of a heart. And of course, later on in the book, and we find out more about, his kids. And so I did have a little bit more of a heart for him, but he was a philanderer. I mean, we have to like, how much could
but not the worst. I mean, not the worst of his era by any means. Look at the Rat Pack. Look at, Sinatra and that lot. I mean, Ari was very plain compared to them.
Yeah, and the fact that she married people that did that. I mean, for how you portrayed JFK, you brought in things that I actually didn't know about their very beginning of their marriage when she was going through the loss of children. And he was not a very caring, hands-on husband to her. So she never really got, I feel bad for her because I don't know if she ever got that from a man. Maybe the last guy she was with after Ari, I don't know much about that relationship.
Maurice Temple's man.
Yeah.
I think from what I've read, he was more of a companion than a lover.
Okay.
And I think her great love was Jack. Maybe in the White House years when she was able to really support him in his role, I think that was the closest point of their marriage.
Yes.
I think in the mid-50s, straight after their marriage, he just wasn't making the compromises. He wasn't being a partner. He was absolutely dedicated to his ambition and his career. And she had to do the, stay home, do the woman stuff. She was supposed to provide the children and she was failing, and Kennedys don't like failure. I think that attitude was definitely there.
Yeah. And the reason I think that I always go with her not being one of the Kennedy women is because I read so much about the 50s with her trying, when they would all get together and, the Kennedy women were right in there participating, and she'd be sitting on the deck with Rose because she didn't like to get her hands dirty, and she didn't understand the whole, but Ethel would join right in with the rest of them. So it seemed like the Kennedy women didn't know how to relate to a woman raised like Jackie, like her. And not that they didn't like her. I think it was just tough for them to relate more to her than Ethel.
She was a little more patrician than them. She'd been brought up a very decent young lady. And their fierce competitiveness must have been difficult as well. Race you to the boat and all this and the whole thing. Whatever. No, it would be a difficult family to fit into, but she did fit in. I think she was one of them. And her children are Kennedys. So.
Yes.
She created a great dynasty. It is a great dynasty. They've done a lot of good. Yeah.
And I'm so happy you went there because you've done such amazing books with the Romanovs and Diana and Wallace. But for you to go here, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. So we do not have much time left. I have no idea when this ends. Tell me what you're doing next. What are you writing right now?
In November 1922, discovery was made in the Egyptian desert of the tomb of Tutankhamun. And if you look at photographs from the time, you see the archaeologist Howard Carter standing outside alongside his patron, Lord Carnarvon. And there's a very short little woman there as well, whose name was Lady Evelyn Herbert, who's really, her role in it has really been written out of history. She was the first one to crawl in. And I've written about her at two different periods in her life. So my editor calls it Downton Abbey because she grew up in Highclere Castle, which is where Downton Abbey is filmed. So my editor calls it Downton Abbey crossed with the Curse of Tutankhamun. So that's what the next one is, and it's coming out in fall 2021.
Okay, see, I thought I was confused in the beginning. I was like, did you say 22? Like I have to wait till 22? But this is so different for you, though. I am so excited.
I mean, I love the 20s, so it was a great excuse to write about the 1920s and in Britain and Egypt. And
yes, I love, and like I said, I can't wait. I love your books. I do. I can't wait for them to come out. Show the cover one more time because I love this cover. I love how
I like it.
Did you like, are they keeping this for the UK cover at all? Like, is that
no.
Well, I love that cover so much just because I love how the women have their backs to each other. And I love, I don't know.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great
cover. It's clever design.
Yeah. And the colors are just beautiful. And, I love a good cover, but you'll have to show us. I can't wait to see what they are doing with the UK cover. I want to see.
Oh, let me show you. Hang on.
Oh, you have it? The second there. Ooh, I like that too, though.
Do you?
Like that, yes. Well, I like that they use that pop of color with her bathing suit.
They both got a yacht in the background.
Yeah, they have yachts in the background. I love that. Well, I am so happy for you. I see all the great reviews on Goodreads and Amazon, and everybody is loving this book, and I get so happy when you get appreciated. So I can't wait till the next one, and then we can talk again.
Oh, Michelle, thank you so much. It's always such a joy to talk to you, and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Stay healthy, stay well, and we will keep in touch. Okay, Jill?
Take care.
Bye-bye.